All right, guys, what's up? So today we're working on installing the harness that I got sent by Nathan Hensley. And so I mentioned that I had someone prep the harness. He's a real smart dude, has a ton of knowledge, and he made a way for us to keep our factory gauges and keep all that functionality with these Coyote swaps without having to buy some aftermarket gauges or some controllers or anything like that. So I'll show you what we got here. If you're trying to do something similar, I highly recommend just going to him. Like, it's not even worth trying to. He doesn't charge a ton, so just go to him. I think like 100, 150 bucks, whatever it was. It's nothing for the amount of value that it provides. So basically, what you'll do is you'll send him your old engine harness. He'll depin what you don't need and send you back this harness. And so this part of the old engine harness to the big 42 pin connector, as well as this part, which pretty much goes down to my transmission for the reverse light and the speedometer and stuff like that. And those sensors are pretty simple, so once you get it back, that'll be really easy to work with. It's only like 2 places they can go and it fits no problem. So then you'll be left with these 4 connectors, and I'll break down like what these do. So this first one is for the alternator, for the coolant temperature. And so this is pinned to fit the coolant temperature sensor off of your OE, like so your 4.6 or even your 3.8 engine. So this fits that. And so I'll show you how I get the coolant system working. There's also a couple other videos on this that are really good. So if what I do doesn't make sense, you may be able to look it up and find someone else. But I'll be sure to kind of explain what I saw and what I did. This little guy here is for the oil pressure. Same thing, it's pretty straightforward. So my oil pressure sensor actually, I don't know if it's because I had a Gen 2 or if it's the F-150, but it doesn't actually fit this connector. So I went out and bought one. So I'll make sure to show you which one I bought, as well as, throw the part numbers in the screen or something like that below in case you need to get the same thing. These wires are for the tachometer. I'm actually going to break these out and splice them into, so I'm going to break these out of this. I'm going to depin this and splice them into some wires on the engine harness actually. So that way the tachometer will read successfully and go into like my RPMs and stuff in the car. So I'll show you how I do that as well. And this last guy, I was told is for a noise sensor. Not sure where this goes. I'm gonna have to figure that out, but I'll make sure I describe whatever I figure out. All right, so down here is where we're going to be doing most of our work. And so I'll kind of talk you through what needs to be done. So first, like I mentioned, my oil pressure. So on my Gen 2 motor, this is my oil pressure sensor right here, coming right off of that filter housing. This isn't the same one, so I could either like depin it and pin out to a connector that looks like this, or I could just swap out the oil pressure sensor. So that's what I'm gonna do, is just swap out the oil pressure sensor. That way I don't have to worry about what wires go where and whatnot. So it just simplifies things. And then also right up here, this sensor right here, for some people it may just be a plug, but it'll still be in the same location. So right above your steering rack, a little bit to the right of this oil pressure sensor, you'll see this guy right up here. And so for me, there's a sensor here. For some, there's a plug. But basically, this is where I'm gonna put my coolant temperature setup. And so you could use the factory place for the Coyote coolant temp sensor, but I just think it's gonna be easier, and from what I've seen, it's easier. But the factory place, if you wanna know, is kinda like right back here. Of course, have a drain pan because your motor may still have coolant in it. Of course, I've learned my lesson before, but pulling this guy, out will cause a mess. But I've already pulled it, so it's not going to be a mess for me. And so that's where our new temperature sensor will go. All right, so right here is going to be what comprises our setup for our new coolant temperature sensor. And this will give us all of our temperature readings for our gauges in the car. And so we have a fitting here that's going to go directly into that hole that we opened and took this old fitting out of. So the threads are the same. This fitting will of course go inside this one, and then our sensor will actually screw into this fitting here. So I'll give you the part numbers for these guys. So LFA 870 is the larger fitting. It's a 3/4 inch MIP to a 1/2 inch FIP. So then we'll come into the next one, LFA 828, 1/2 inch to 3/8 inch. And then of course we have our coolant temp sensor. So you may, I mean, if you pulled this off of your old engine, when you pulled it, then you probably already have this. I didn't pull this, so I actually bought another one. And so the part number, I got this at AutoZone actually, and the part number it says U284. So this is pretty much all we need to get this running. Of course, I'm going to run some Teflon tape on the threads and stuff just to give it a good seal, but this is all we need for our coolant temp setup. All right guys, so now these fittings are all taped up and ready to be installed. So the good thing about these guys is since they're hex bushings, you can actually get a socket over them and just kind of run them in. Obviously don't go too crazy and over tighten it and strip it out or anything, but it is convenient. So I'll probably run these in one at a time. So put this one in the block, then put the other one in that, and then our sensor. So let's go get these in and ready to be plugged up. All right, so now we're ready to run these guys in. Of course, starting with the largest fitting. For me, this is a 1 1/16 socket I'm putting on this, 1 inch and 1/16. So first I'll just get it started, of course. So like I said, we want to run that down snug, but we don't want to go crazy tight and strip that out. Just like anything, when you're going in the block, you really don't want to strip that out because it just makes it a much bigger headache to kind of get anything done. So we're gonna go tight, but not too tight. I don't recommend using like an impact or anything for this. Of course you can, and if you take your time, you'll be fine. But just my recommendation. Why force it? Just be patient. It's not that difficult. So of course next, we'll go with our smaller brass bushing, the 1/2 to 3/8. And for me, I think this was a 19mm socket. I lied. It's actually a 21mm socket for me. So same thing, just get it started with your hand, and then you can come in with your wrench or your ratchet rather, and bring it down. Once again, nice and snug, but don't go crazy. We can always come back. You see, it's clear, like it's clear as day. We can look at it, so we can always come back with the engine running to make sure it's not leaking or anything. But I don't think we'll have any problems, especially with the extra tape to keep it sealed. But you know, that's what it's for. We can always come back and double check, but you'd rather be just snug and not run the risk of stripping it. Because if you come back and you say, hey, it's leaking, you can always tighten it some more. But I think it's really good, and I think the Teflon tape will do a good job at sealing it. Also, I know the sensor I pulled out had like a silicone type seal, gasket seal on the thread, so it was kind of already some of that left in there. So I did clean as much of that out as I could. But if you have anything like that, make sure you clean it out just so it doesn't mess with your seal. And so now, last but not least, of course, the sensor itself. So for this guy, this is where my 19 fit most. So same thing, I'm gonna start with by hand first. So now our coolant temp sensor is in there pretty tight and pretty good. We have some Teflon tape to seal it really well. And so now we are ready to put our connector in. Of course, before we do that, while we're down here, it makes sense just to go ahead and do our oil pressure switch as well, our sensor. So that's next. What's up, y'all, and welcome back. Thanks for watching that video on how to install the Lethal Nate wiring harness setup. I wanted this to be really clear and easily understandable, so I wanted to go over every little detail. So it's a little bit longer, so I split it into 2 videos. So our next video will wrap that up. If you find this helpful and you find the knowledge useful, please share, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll get you on the next one.